Well, welcome to Prince and Prince Holding Space. I'm His Excellency Finn Bainson, Order of the Pelican, yeah, Bainson, and Knight of An Tir and current Prince of the Summits.
And I am Maestro Eduardo Francesco Maria Lucrezia. I am a member of the Order of the Laurel, member of the Order of the Pelican, Lion of An Tir, and current Prince of the Summits with my husband and love of my life. Um, we're going to talk about, and it's mostly actually we want this to be a conversation. And at some point, during the close to the end, maybe 15, 20 minutes, we'll ask the moderator, Alessandra, to turn off the recording so that we have a safe space for people to raise concerns or talk about things that they don't feel they want recorded. But it's mostly this is a conversation because this is our experience, right? We're not saying this is the way that everyone should hold space. We're not saying this is the only way. This is just what we do or what we hope we are doing. We want your input and your advice and your ideas so that we can have a larger contingency of LGBTQIA plus people
And allies.
and allies in the SCA. Also, there's something we want to say at the very beginning of the class or the discussion. Some of these things are very context specific to An Tir. Most of our SCA experiences are in An Tir. If you were on early, I started the SCA in Atlantia as a college student. Very different experience. But most of my time has been in An Tir and Kite, and I had about a year in Kite that I lived in Kite, and you're in Tir.
All An Tir for me.
An Tir. So this is very specific to An Tir, which is a really, really safe space. Mostly a safe space. It's also safe for us because we're multiple peers. We participate in the SCA at a very high level. It's easier for us from a safety perspective, but we want to acknowledge that it's not safe for people to do some of the things that we do in different parts of the country or the world. So please, safety first, safety, be safe, make sure you feel safe, make sure you have allies around that make you feel safe. It's really important because there are still pockets where it's not safe to be out at all. You wanna, okay, we have some notes. So we did a class earlier this morning on inspirational equality, and we would encourage you all to watch the recording of that when you get a chance, because really this piece grew out of that. I've been in the SCA for over 40 years, and there wasn't a safe space, or there wasn't even the discussion of holding space or creating space for the LGBTQIA plus community when I started in the SCA. So this is just around some of the things that we do to help that, and a discussion either in the chat or if you want to open your mics about what does it mean to create and hold space for that community. For us, for me, and then His Highness can talk as well, it really means visibility and being able to be out and open about my relationship and who I am at the core. Some people will say, oh, it doesn't matter that you have that you're gay. That's secondary. And then again, as my experience, I don't have the experience of other parts of our community. But it does, because it's representation and visibility and having the ability to say it's okay to be who you are, no matter who you are in the SCA, and especially in the fighting context.
Yeah.
Do you want to say some things about
Well,
maybe?
yeah. So going on to that visibility piece, being a fighter in our community at large, and sort of being open and out about being a gay fighter. Um, I'm not really a put it in your face LGBTQ plus positive person. I sort of pass. That's a privilege of mine, as being sort of heteronormative. But in the same space, like when we get into our circles and identify ourselves, I'm not afraid to announce that Eduardo is my inspiration, Eduardo is my husband, and I happen to be a fighter who is gay. Um, but not realizing, and I was sort of told this morning, the ripples of that, and being out and proud and okay to say those things helps create the space for others to also say, um, those things for themselves and identify for themselves. And so I would definitely say that visibility is huge. But in context, we have trusted allies and friends who love us and know us. Uh, I've never felt, in my instances, unsafe because I've had those people that I felt comfortable being around.
Yeah, the it's the SCA is changing a lot and depends on where you live and what your context is. In Ontario, we have an open list, um, a very, very open list. So typically, before Avacol became their own kingdom, we would have upwards of 100 to 100, and I think the highest was about 126 in our crown lists. Now we're hovering around 80-ish in our crown lists, and in our principality lists, we have two principalities, Tiri and the Summits. We're right around 25 to 30 people in the lists, so it's a large list. I think it's sort of working backwards is what I want to do. What I want to talk about is um, that is the most visible time, right? When you are in the crown lists, especially if you're progressing in the crown lists or the principality lists. And for us, it's very much a team sport. It's not individual. It's not an individual sport. It's not about Finn and his physicality and winning the day. It's about us as a couple progressing through the lists and being that team to support each other. So the inspiration is just as important as the combatant. It's a time when you can be very visible, where you can show the support to your fighter as the inspiration, where you can be watching the lists. And in the case of An Tir and the other kingdoms I've been in, there's an opportunity to acknowledge your inspiration at every single step of the way, depending on the style of the tournament. So that's sort of where we start. We're a team. We have a lot of support behind us, but that teaming and thinking of it as a team sport or a couple sport instead of just an individual sport is a really good place to start.
Mhm. Well, that couples space doesn't necessarily have to be like what we are as husbands. It can be a couple relationship with a good friend or somebody else as well. So, like, basically synthesizing what you're saying is that it's a team of two, or sometimes more if your life situation is more than that as a support system. But going into these tournaments, it's about working as a co unit.
Yeah. Activate your trusted allies. It's really critical to make sure that you have good support and good allies um, to help you, especially when you are progressing further and further and further into the lists. Um, uh, and it's not just also about the tournament. We do exactly the same thing at fight practice. So occasionally Finn, His Highness Finn will go to fight practice on his own, but a lot of the times we are there together because we want to encourage inspirations to participate of all inspirations, not just LGBTQIA plus inspirations, but all inspirations to be a clear partnership in this role. So we go to fight practices together. We are out and crowd together. Everyone in our local area, in our principality, in our kingdom are very, very supportive of us. So we have that privilege of doing that. It wasn't always that way. In the beginning of inspirational equality, it was very difficult and hard. I specifically got called a lot of names and told to shut up and sit down, but we just worked through that. So maybe we can also talk a little bit about how to work through those kinds of things. Again, in IE, we talked a lot about having a community and a confidant. Like those are two different things and very important. So have that community base where you can activate them as allies and help and occasionally shields if you need that. But then also have a confidant if that's your partner or your husband, your wife, your partner, or an individual that will really be that shoulder to cry on and to listen to, and that ear. We're very lucky we have a lot of people in our lives like that.
Did you want to talk about moving
Yeah,
into
why
tournament
don't
stuff?
you do that?
Yeah, so one of the next things we want to talk about is we know that there's a lot of differences, not only biologically, et cetera, in fighters and how we sort of prep and get ready for tournaments. And one of the big things that's important to me to talk about is setting up tournaments that allow for multiple physicalities to fully participate. And I obviously come from, maybe not obviously, but I come from a male perspective, and that is the one that I have and the one that I've experienced my whole life. And so I have that privilege of entering into tournaments with an ability of testosterone to just jump into a fight and be able to go. And I have a lot of friends and my co-squire at the time, well, anyway, is female presenting and other female fighters that I work with, and having these conversations around how do we equalize the playing field when I know that they've told me that they take a little bit longer to warm up or they need more time to get into armor. And so I've been really trying to interact with those types of individuals in order to get a better understanding and how, especially now, as we as Royals can establish tournaments, allow for the schedule to change and to build that space into the pre-tournament before the actual tournament to know that they have the time and the energy and the space to get to that level that everybody is at. So that's something that I would love to sort of chit chat about at the end or even during this discussion, is different ways that different fighters feel that they need to engage in that fighting pre-tournament space. And so, I mean, like something that we were talking about in our upcoming coronet list is creating the invocation, going through the processional, having time for an extra bit of time for the challenge rounds to happen, people to get into armor, free warm-ups with people who aren't in the tournament. So they have that ability to get some of that extra nerve and that energy and excitement up to the same level that everybody else entering in that tournament can be equalized. And so then it makes it at least hopefully more fair and approachable to all physicalities.
Yeah, and we try to say all physicalities instead of male presenting or female presenting, or because people are in all sorts of different phases of transition, perhaps, or may have less access to testosterone or to their hormonal, their born hormones. So it's important to think about it from that perspective. So that's why we use physicality instead of saying women or female presenting or trans. We like to use that. We want to make it accessible. We want to make fighting accessible to all physicalities. That's from the fighter's perspective. And it's the same from the inspiration's perspective, something we're also doing. And I want to say we have an incredible amount of privilege right now that we are trying to hold even more space with because of he won a tournament, right? So we get to have that time and space at every court that we have. So far, we've only had one. We were supposed to be at an event this weekend, which would be our second court, but that got canceled because of the weather here. The county needed the space where we were having the event to house and feed people that were impacted by our weather. So obviously we can't, the event was canceled. But at every single court, we have a DEIB statement that we read, which I'd be happy to find and put in the chat for you all. It's incredibly important for us to do that. And not only the words, so partly words matter. Words matter an incredible amount, the words that we say to ourselves and the words that we say to others, but we also link that with actions. So we're trying to support classes like this. We will highlight one class a week for the rest of our reign from this experience and make sure that people have access to it and know how to get to the recordings so that they can educate and inform themselves. And then, as Finn said, the tournament styles that we get to choose, because we have this privilege, is one thing, but also from an inspiration standpoint, in An Tir and other places, I'm sure as well, we have the big list board of all the fighters, and we have a large list board in An Tir because there's 80 plus fighters. And in the summits, it's 25 to 30 people. Yeah. We are also adding, not a requirement, but we're encouraging to, we're going to imagine our list boards, and we will have the fighters' arms and their inspirations arms. Because it's, again, we go back to the fact that we want to make sure that this is a team sport and not just about the fighter, that it's the fighter and the inspiration. And although we said we would have time at the end to talk, if there are people that want to talk, ask a question or a statement, I think I'm sorry, I'm not going to say your name properly. Anga, is it Angus? Spelled?
It's Angus, yeah.
You had a few words that you wanted to say, or some additional perspective.
Oh, sure thing. And
if you don't feel comfortable or safe, we're going to have the safe space at the end as well. So
you're good. You're good. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you both for doing this and all the work you've been doing. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to briefly say for myself. So I'm a trans man. I pass incredibly well. And I spent most of my first decade in the SCA just never even telling people, because I had that privilege. And, it never came up, so it wasn't a big thing. Until I started to see and speak to people who were having issues that I wasn't having. And, I'm in Artemisia myself, but I get out to An Tir a lot for events. I have a lot of friends there. And I myself had the experience of just sitting around the fire chatting with a bunch of people, and someone started making some fairly homophobic comments. And it was the first time I ever felt the need to actually step in and do something. And the response I got was, well, it's just, half of these guys, they're all, ex-army, it's not a big deal. They all know that they don't really mean it. And I had to say, but what about everyone else around the fire here? They don't know that. And they were like, well, there's not any, queer people around here. I was like, well, I am. And I happen to know 2 other people around this fire who are bi. And what you have done is you have just made them feel like they're not safe around you. And so that's the point where I started saying, well, I'm going to be really
yeah, we really appreciate you being, out and proud and able to do that in a safe space. Remember, right?
And so one of the things I did for myself, I made myself, both of my shields now have huge trans pride flags on them. My entire fighting gear, I have rainbow pants, I have a trans pride themed tunic. I'm also Jewish, so I'm working on putting a Star of David on both of my shield bosses to just be very loud and very present. And even I was shocked by the amount of people who came up to me afterwards to say, hey, thank you, that makes me feel safe.
Yeah.
The one thing I just wanted to say is because of that interaction I had around the fire and because of some of the interactions I've had since, I've had so many people that I love, admire, who are very good friends of mine, and they've gotten their Rainbow Knights chains and everything, and they've made a point of saying, I'm going to be, an advocate. And I just want to make sure that everyone hears it is so valuable. It really is to see, especially cis straight men, doing that and being advocates. But we need you to back it up with actions as well as words. We need you to actually call those things out. Even if it seems like a minor joke, you have to make it clear that you will not accept that just because you have that privilege, because it really does make a difference for the people who don't feel safe and don't feel able to call it when that happens.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a really good class that's being offered during this Collegium and by Geneviève Deschaux, Mr. Geneviève Deschaux, or Matris, sorry, who is our grail bearer in the summits. It's called See Something, Say Something. So it's a great toolkit for people, for allies, as well as for people within our community to utilize those tool sets. So when you do see something or hear something like you did, you can say something in a way that allows you to feel safe. It's really important that our allies step up because, as I said in the beginning of the class, it's not safe for some people to be out in different parts of the country. So take a look at Genevieve's class. I'd also like to say that we've been, and so as my friend Isabella would say, it's not a Olympic sport to make me cry. So if I start, please excuse me. But our Knights Council and the Summits has been the most supportive group of people. They've got our backs. They are incredible allies, and they really, when we were victorious, I don't like to say won, but when we won Coronet, immediately it was not only business as usual, but it was, what can we do to help? How can we make you feel safe? What do we need to do differently? Is there anything we need to do differently?
Yeah.
All sorts of things like that.
And we're learning, and if there's anybody that says something that's uncomfortable, let us know and we'll try to talk to them. Like, just the fact that they were open to those kinds of conversations and wanting to know what they could do to do better was huge.
Yeah. Let's see. Also, something maybe I'd like to say is that, at least for me in An Tir, this isn't a new issue. I did not come out in the SCA until the mid-90s. But when I did, I had a trans female presenting person fight for me in Crown lists, which was a first in An Tir, which was probably actually the first in most of the kingdoms. And so I immediately said when she asked me if she could fight for me, I was like, yeah, but right now I just came out and there was a lot of like chatter and about it. And I'm like, I'm not sure that you want me there. And she was like, okay, hello. This is oh, thank you, Disa, for posting that. I was just about to look for it. It just didn't even like occur to me that she was having the same issues. It was wonderful. And that was in like 1998. And it was An Tir was welcoming back then as well. Disa's put in the chat our statement that we say
Yes,
at
thank you,
our at all of our courts. And again, and I think Angus, it's really important to that what you said is that words, and you can see in there that, you know, the word we say that the words are important, but the action is when coupled with your words is really, really critical.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the briefest way I can put it is just that when allies make a point of calling those things out and making those actions, what you do is you create the safe space for us to not have to feel vulnerable and unsafe being ourselves. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We've had many, many people come to us during the time as Highnesses, and now that we've stepped up, that it's remarkable the people that have said, thank you, you've made us feel welcome, you've made us feel safe. My child now sees a
future that
future
themselves
right
in our position.
And they could see themselves. Yes, Disa or anyone, if you'd like to take our statement and adapt it, that's totally fine with us. If you'd like us to help you with that, we'd also be happy to do that. Mostly, what time is it? Half an hour. Mostly now we just sort of like to open it to questions and ideas and things that you have that could help make that space bigger and hold it easier. If you have questions or comments, we're going to do about 10 to 15 minutes of open comments, and then we'll shut them down, shut the video down, recording, so that we can have some space. So Your Excellency Disa, I think you had your hand up first. So why don't you come on camera and ask your question or comment?
Sure. I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience as a bisexual person. It can be tricky because we can pass so easily. We can kind of hide in the shadows. And I realized several years ago that I needed to make a point of being out as visibly as I possibly could, because even as an inspiration to a male presenting person, I am still a queer person, and it's important to show that representation even in that place, you know. And I've had a number of people come up to me and say, thank you for sharing that, thank you for showing that. And I think that that's a really important thing to mention also, because the erasure is a thing, and I think it's really important to kind of share that as well. And it opens up that space even more, you know, and I think that's important. That's all.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have any thoughts or ideas on what holding space means or what it represents to them? Volk?
Oh, thank you. You both are awesome. As an old white man, how do I show, other than portraying my ally flag at an event, which I am definitely going to be doing, what else can I do to show that I'm open?
Go ahead.
I'd say, firstly, sort of what Angus had said about shutting down those comments that are homophobic, transphobic, or dismissive, right? So using your position of power and privilege as a white man, as an ally, it's making those comments and changing the conversation that's around you and that continues on after you. Saying we're not going to take a stand for this kind of behavior and that's inappropriate. Hey, let's change the topic there and let's not go there. That's, you know, those kinds of things in my mind are what help guide the direction as an ally, right? Being a safe space, as a person as an ally, those from within the community get to call you the ally, right? And they see that through your words and they see that through your actions. So there's in my mind, a very sort of fine line between being performative and a true ally. So you need to make sure that you're willing to hear what people say and say, when I need you to do these things, and saying, I got you.
Yeah, and I think it's at least in An Tir, and I'm sorry I go back to that because that's really our context and our real our life is here. You can, I would say, ask questions. Ask
Like you just did.
people like you just did. What can I do to help? How can I support you? Is there anything you need that isn't being provided? And then really Genevieve's class on See Something, Say Something is amazing.
Which
if we
what's
were
going on right now.
yeah, king of the world, we would say all of our people should take this class. It's really important, and it's a great opportunity to learn how to in a way that people can hear what's happened, so that they're able to, there are tool sets that you can utilize so that people are not turned off and offended by what you have just seen or heard, and how you want to address it. So take that class, I would say, and then show up like this. Well, do the things that you need to do like this. Isolde, did you have a question? Or Taylor,
So
sorry.
I wanted to introduce real quick. One of the oaths we take as peers is to speak and to be silent. And I think it's something that some of us, I think it really applies in this situation as well, right? Is to both create space for other people to speak, and to also then, when some people aren't being listened to be the one to speak, right? So it's being, I know it's one of the things I've had to work on, is being very cognizant of not, of giving space to others, right?
Yeah, it's really, you're right. It's very important. Speak and be silent. Holding space doesn't mean that you take up that space. It means that you create the space for others to be able to tell their story, to tell their truth, to be who they are within that space. It's not your space, it's everyone's space.
Real quick, I think also it's sometimes you creating that space means providing the space for them to have the conversation, and then you not being there. That's also creating space, because you're making sure that they have that opportunity to be comfortable in that environment. And hopefully, Volk, I hope that answered your question from before. I wanted to just double check. So, thumbs up. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Sorry, you got Volk in here twice, so that was odd. Megan, I'm sorry, I can't see because the lights
I'll
are so
read it. It
bright.
says, how would you handle a
Oh, that
situation
was
where you were
Hadassah, so.
accused as an ally of bullying? I have been an ally forever, but someone who took a personal dislike to me is making accusations, even though others keep telling me excuse me, you're wrong.
So personality is a big issue, right? On all sides of the thing. So of all sides of this conversation, that would be hard. I would say that you need to have allies of your own as a person that thinks of themselves as an ally, or has LGBTQIA plus people in their lives who have said you're such a great ally. I think you need to have people that you can lean on, that you can talk to, that you can have a confidant that helps you with this. It's very difficult. The bullying and harassment policy in the SCA is new. It's not well applied. There's not standards or ways to access it that are equal in our experience. So that's difficult. I would say, you need to have a community around you that can support you and then can figure out a plan of action. Because that in and of itself, if it continues, is bullying and as well. It's a hard situation to deal with. I'm sorry it's happened to you. Megan, did you have a question or comment as well? You suddenly popped up on video, so.
Me?
Oh, sorry, no, it's Katla popped up. Everything
So
keeps
the
switching
text,
around
yeah.
and the text is under, we don't see your name. The
Yeah.
top row, we don't see your names.
I'm just watching.
And there's
Oh, okay.
Another comment, Osgith, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, I'm sorry, or incorrectly, I'm sorry. It says one small thing is if you're meeting someone for the first time, introducing yourself with your pronouns, even if they seem obvious, and making an effort to learn and remember how other people want to be addressed can be enormously welcoming for a lot of trans and non-binary people. On the topic of things allies can do, yeah, sorry, I'm absolutely no unimportant in any way. Yes, you are important, but I thought it might be a helpful note.
Yeah.
Definitely stating that you have what your pronouns are, in my experience, has been a door opener or an icebreaker, saying I'm at least aware that these are the pronouns that I go by, and it helps with an introduction to let the other person identify what their pronouns are. And making sure that you remember those pronouns is really key. It's just as much as a name. And I know that it's really hard when we have two names, we have our modern name and our SCA name, and people are like, oh, I'm really forgetful of names. It can be really important across the board to just remember the name and remember the pronouns and make an effort. And I know that we're all trying and people are coming from various different backgrounds, but the effort definitely shows when you make that effort.
If I may add something verbally, is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yes, thank you.
I was just gonna say, on the subject of remembering and like not remembering, I know that sometimes the sort of a lot of mainstream like news sources or like popular zeitgeist often makes people believe that a lot of trans people will be offended or upset at people not remembering. But if you go, oh shoot, I met that person and they said their pronouns and now I don't remember them, I don't personally know anyone who is offended by someone going, hey, I know you told me your pronouns earlier, but I forgot there's a lot of people, like it's the same as forgetting someone's name sometimes. So I just want to say that most trans and non-binary people were pretty friendly and pretty like happy when people want to respect us. So it's very rarely like an unwelcome thing to ask someone. I just felt like that's important because I know that a big anxiety for a lot of people is like being afraid that someone's going to be angry, and almost no one is when approached like kindly.
Yeah.
And they works almost in every situation, right? Like it's a if you cannot remember or you're unsure,
Yes.
you works, right? Thank you. Oh, you don't say thank she, or you don't say thank him. You think so. You works, they works, and like you said, I think which is really important. I'm sorry, I don't remember your pronouns. Can you help me with those? But you have to be confident and able to do that. Practice on your friends. Practice with your friends that you know, saying, "I'm sorry, I forgot your pronouns." It's a safe space to do that. And then it'll be easier to say that and do that when you're in a different situation.
Thank you for sharing that experience. I would also say, like, if they've identified as a he, him, or a she, her, making sure that that pronoun is also important if they choose not to go by they, them.
Sure, but if you what my point was is if you forget, they always works. They's a good one to utilize. Yes, you Volk, you can.
I go by he, him.
I like he, him, or they. They, them is fine with me as well.
Thank you for asking, Bob.
Other questions or comments?
So we're close to the 15-minute mark. We can also switch over to the end the recording and then be able to have more safe space discussion if people wanted to do that.